Afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming us today in this webinar to present and to help you to prepare your submissions for the EDEN 2023 annual conference next June from 18 to 20 in Dublin and hosted by Dublin City University. It's a pleasure to have with me today here Orna Farrell and Mark Brown, Vice President of EDEN Digital Learning Europe. And the idea today is just to introduce a little bit the focus of our conference, the activities that we are planning to organize in the conference, and the most important thing is to solve your ideas, or maybe to help to all of you and to encourage all of you to submit your proposals to the EDEN 2023 annual conference. I think that we can start with Orna, please. The floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Joseph. It's great to be here. Looking forward to welcoming you all to Dublin, I hope, in June. As Mark said, the weather is sunny today, which it bodes well for the future. I'm going to share my screen now. I just have a couple of slides to tell you a little bit about the conference. And Mark and Joseph are going to join me as well. Hopefully you can see my slides okay. I'll just go full screen now. I've got a thumbs up, have I?
We can see your slide.
So we've called this webinar a very inspiring Yes You Can. The conference theme centers around a very positive narrative for the future, drawing on that famous quote which Barack Obama used, yes we can, and of course, yes you can contribute to this conference. So just going to go through some kind of background information about the conference, a little bit about the venue, the papers, etc., and give you a flavor of what you can expect in Dublin in June. So just a few key dates to begin. The first deadline for submissions is the 10th of March, so quite soon. That might be extended depending on how things are going. The conference itself is the 19th and 20th, with the PhD symposium on the 18th, which is the Sunday. The gala dinner will be on the Monday evening, the 19th. We have been preparing a really nice lineup for the gala dinner, which is almost booked. So I'll share some information about that. So registration is open now, and if you're looking to get the early bird, it ends in May the 10th. So that's just some kind of key dates for your diary. Here are some beautiful pictures of the venue. So the conference takes place in Dublin City University, where myself and Mark both are based. Dublin City University is a large university in Irish terms, not in some European terms. We have about 20,000 students, and it's a dual mode university. But the majority of study is still quite campus-based. The conference will take place in our Faculty of Education, called the Institute of Education. You can see it there on the left. It's Ireland's only full Faculty of Education. So it's very unique in the Irish context. And we have a large number of students studying in various areas of education. Some initial teacher education, a growing number of postgraduate research students, and a very wide range of topics and subtopics within the whole area of education. Digital learning is one particular, quite a strong area in the faculty, but there's lots of other intersecting topics which kind of go with this conference theme: sustainability, new types of pedagogy, inclusive education. So you can see there's the faculty. On the right is one of our libraries, and that's called Woodlock Hall. So it's a kind of interesting mix of old and new Dublin City University. It's one of the newer Irish universities, started in the 1980s, but we have some really beautiful old buildings, so that you will get a chance to see the campus, have a lovely walking tour as well. The other thing, I suppose, is it's very close to Dublin City Centre. If you are thinking about where you'd like to stay, you can either stay near the university, or the city centre is about a 10-minute taxi ride or half an hour walk from the venue. We have a really excellent lineup of speakers. These are the 3 keynote speakers. Mark, I might ask you to say a few things about the keynotes. It's an all-female lineup of speakers.
Yes, happy to talk about the speakers. We've got a suite of keynote speakers and then a second group of spotlight speakers. And Orna's point about all of our speakers being women isn't just, I think, symbolic. It's actually really core to the conference theme. Orna mentioned about Obama's use of "yes, we can," and of course, will.i.am then popularized that. But actually, that expression goes back precisely 50 years ago from I think it's the Andrews sisters who introduced it. And it's core to the civil rights movement. It's core to the equity and gender, particularly gender equity, but as well as civil rights. And I think in the post-COVID environment, it's all about equity, diversity, and inclusion. So we hope to model that in the way the conference is designed, and in particular, our choice of speakers. They're not all white, I should add, and we do have a variety or a diversity of countries represented. In terms of each of them, I don't want to steal too much thunder, but we're going to start the day with Ricky talking about futures, very well known for her work in sort of speculative fiction, thinking about different kinds of futures, disrupting the normal that we have. Melissa is extremely well known for her work around systematic literature reviews. She's published several studies during COVID that have looked at the lessons and experiences through COVID, but also things, systematic literature reviews around engagement in the field of digital education. And then Murren, who will sort of come in on the second day, she's well known for her role as CEO of the UK Association for Learning Technology, as kind of partner association with Eden. She's also well linked into DCU in various ways. And we hope what Murren's going to do is talk about how, as Eden as a professional community and the members of Eden can really put into practice, yes, we can, by the challenge of what individuals might do. So, Orna, hopefully that's enough. You're happy if you wish to elaborate, or I've undersold our keynotes.
You've done the job there, Mark, I think. And I suppose just to link it together a bit, Melissa will participate in the PhD symposium as well, alongside Professor Olaf Svaki-Richter, and do a special session for the PhD candidates on systematic reviews. I'm really looking forward to that. I've been very keen to learn this approach myself. They use a really interesting approach drawing on the EPI method. So we also have a fantastic lineup of spotlight speakers. Mark, maybe you want to explain what a spotlight speaker is.
Sure. We want to engage delegates not just by having them listening to keynotes. And I suppose one thing we should do is walk the talk of digital education when designed well. So by that, all of our speakers are going to be challenged to, in various ways, engage participants, whether that be through questions, whether it be digitally through polling and so forth, but also not to have us just sitting listening to individuals for a long time. So our spotlight speakers are intended to, short, sharp, quick presentation, highlight a particular issue, and then give opportunity for debate and discussion. We're going to start, it's great on the first day, with the European Commission sort of presence talking about the Digital Education Action Plan, because we're, as the European universities, not to suggest that everyone is coming from Europe, but the action plan sets the broader framework as well as the Digital Education Hub. And then in the afternoon on the first day, we have a real interesting mix. The Deputy Vice Chancellor, some of you would see that as Deputy Rector of Deakin University in Australia, Liz Johnson. Deakin is very well known for its innovation. And then we have two European speakers to complement the session, all talking about how, yes, we can do things. Alexandra will be talking about centers for teaching and learning and the kind of design that they have. And then our own colleague, Blunt White, will discuss how DCU is putting that into practice. Actually, at DCU, one thing we're really very proud of, true to the conference theme, is in the Times Higher Education rankings on the Sustainable Development Goals, we're ranked 8th in the world for reducing inequalities. So that's just, again, something that why we think this conference and the theme is really relevant at this point in time.
Thanks, Mark. And some of you might be familiar with Alexandra Mihai's blog, The Educationalist, which is a really rich resource. She's a fantastic contributor and sharer of good ideas and resources, particularly around topics like learning design, academic development. So if you haven't had a look, I recommend you do. During the pandemic, her blog posts were really supporting colleagues trying to grapple with some of these areas. And just to say, to add a little on Blónid as well, DCU has a huge government grant of about 20 million, and Blónid is leading that project. And it's a big curriculum redesign project called DCU Futures, trying to reimagine how the DCU curriculum will look in the future. There's a lot of really experimental and innovative pedagogy being tried at the moment, and Blónid will share some of those insights. Challenge-based learning is one of the things, virtual laboratories, and a lot of tinkering around with different blends of education as well. So I think you'll find her a very interesting speaker also, even though she is my colleague. And as Mark said, the whole inclusion aspect is very strong in DCU. The university's mission is transforming lives and societies. So hopefully you'll see that kind of woven throughout the conference. The social program, the most important bit. No, that's a joke. So we have a really good social program lined up, starting with a welcome reception on the Sunday, which will take place in the St. Patrick's campus. There's also a walking tour of the campuses. As I mentioned, we have a kind of interesting mix of old and new. One of the nearby buildings or areas is called All Hallows, and there's some really beautiful 300 or 400-year-old churches and old buildings there, which might be of interest to some. But we also have some cutting-edge facilities like virtual reality labs and Lego labs and all sorts of stuff that might interest the technically inclined. The gala dinner looks to be taking place. It's almost booked or close to booked in this beautiful photograph down the bottom along the River Liffey in the centre of Dublin, the CHQ building, and it features the Epic Museum, which is the Irish Emigration Museum, which combines some really interesting digital methods with history, Irish history, but also the history of Irish emigration, which connects up to many countries around the world. So we're going to start the evening there with a reception and a look at the museum. And then we go underground and have our dinner in the restaurant next door. Do you want to add anything there, Mark, to that?
Well, probably just what I put in the chat box. We think it's a great fit for the conference because the Epic Museum is the world's first fully digital museum. So it's really a highly interactive experience. And actually for many, I don't know if we've got many Irish potential delegates amongst us today, but many Irish people in my experience haven't actually been there. So we think it'll be a nice fresh venue, but it's also going underground for the dinner in the caverns, or how do you describe those? Orna, what's the right term, do you think, for where we're going to be in the alcoves under the building itself?
They are like caverns. I think the building used to be part of the customs, because that part of that's the river, that's where the boats used to come up to leave their goods. And I think the underground caverns or vaults are where goods were stored. So again, an interesting mix of old and new.
And I think, Orna, if I just add the point that you made in our design of the conference, during COVID, we almost could have attended a webinar every single day or some kind of online event every week. And what we're hoping to do in the way we designed this conference is to ensure there are lots of opportunities for those social interactions that you can't do in quite the same way online, because in many respects, that's the real value of a face-to-face conference. Yes, we'll have some streaming of sessions to preempt any questions, but ultimately we want people to mingle and network and catch up with people. Those are the conversations that are most valuable in my view.
And there's many places to do that in Dublin. As you can, there's plenty of pubs and music, and to use an Irish word, crack, which is an Irish word for fun. So there'll be lots of opportunity for that too. And then we'll finish off with a closing reception as well. So that's the social program. Mark has kind of touched on the theme a little bit. So it's yes, we can. So it kind of centers around these three questions, trying to reimagine a better future, because I suppose in a way we're trying to take a positive outlook rather than a negative outlook. I think in the post-pandemic environment, there was a lot of negativity around remote emergency teaching, or whatever phrase you want to use. And there's been a lot of reassessing of education generally in this environment. So I suppose we're trying to promote a more optimistic perspective. Do you want to come in, Josep or Mark, on the conference theme?
Yes, Mark, go ahead. I think it's better. Mark?
Sure. I'm risk of probably repeating what I said earlier, but I'm conscious looking at the numbers. There are some people who have probably turned up a few minutes later, so they may not have heard what I said. Essentially, the comment around the important EDI, equity, diversity, and inclusion is really core to this conference, because one of the questions that we need to answer, just because we have the technology doesn't always mean that we should use it. And I think that's very relevant in now what's emerging is, if you like, the age of AI. And there are a whole lot of questions that emerge out of these technologies for educational purposes. What is it that we want this technology to serve in the future, both as our education system, but also in terms of contributing to the types of societies we need in the future? I made reference to the Sustainable Development Goals previously, so we would see that those are also sort of core to discussions around the conference. And I'm probably preempting a few more slides ahead, Orna, but I'm giving a bit of a sense of also papers that might be well received that are linked into some of these questions. So if you're thinking about submitting a paper, do try to address these questions if you can, or maybe one of the questions in a broad sense.
That's a good way to put it, Mark. Yeah, the SDG goals and also the area of green tech is an interesting new emerging area as well. You know, the environmental cost of the technology we use, both the hardware cost, the energy cost, especially in Ireland, we've experienced quite a bit of an energy crisis. I'm sure that's been the case in other contexts too. And how much energy are we using to run all these servers and support all these technologies? Is technology always the answer? So these are the kind of questions we're looking for. Of course, there will be, I'm sure, a number of submissions about ChatGPT, which is kind of the bleeding edge topic at the moment. Everyone is curious about it. So a little bit more on the kind of subtopics, just to develop the themes out a bit. So education for transformation, future pedagogies or innovative pedagogies, you know, what's new and what's next, both in the pedagogy and the technology. Always interested in new forms of learning. I've just been reading Tim Fawn's new article about entangled pedagogy. So next generation teachers and learners, again, the post-COVID kind of reflective period we're in. What skills do the next generation of teachers need, or educators, and what skills do the next generation of learners need? It's quite clear that they need digital skills, but you know, what more than that? They also need to become critical users and consumers of technology, in my opinion. Connecting up then with the sustainability theme that we mentioned earlier, the whole area of digital citizenship and sustainable futures. And then different types of research design for the future. Anything to add to the research design bit, Mark? What?
Sorry, I was just turning off the mute. Yeah, I think when I was mentioning before with our opening keynote around speculative fiction methods, some of you may or may not be familiar with quite an emerging debate around how we look at and research the future, and who's included in discussions around futures, because not everyone necessarily is engaged in that. And even if we link back to the first topic around transformation or transformative forms of education, generally transformations in history have resulted in winners and losers. So in the so-called digital transformation period that we're going through, who will be the winners and losers? And from a research perspective, who do we need to be researching? Where are the gaps that we should be looking, and so forth?
It's an interesting methodology, the speculative fictional, right? And interesting about the gaps too, Mark. The whole digital divide was very brought into focus over COVID. Even basics like having fast broadband and having enough computers in your house to be able to learn or teach online were big factors. So interesting areas to think about.
Or no, perhaps one other thing is that people might be wondering, well, will my paper fit under those themes or not? I think it would be pretty easy to ensure that your paper could fit at least one of those themes. They're very broad. Future pedagogies covers many things, next generation teachers and learners. But what we will be looking in, and I'm probably getting ahead of your slides here, but we will be looking that the papers do address the theme that they identify. That's a very important consideration in writing your abstract or even the choice of your title.
Indeed, that's a good method, is include a few words from the theme in your title. I think you might have taught me that. So a little bit about the PhD symposium. Giuseppe, do you want to talk us through this?
Yes, thank you, Orna. Yes, as you can see here on the slide, this is something that from Eden we are so proud to announce one time more, not this in our annual conference. I think we started probably 8 years ago, no, with this PhD symposium. It's a free part of the Eden annual conference, and it's focused to the PhD candidates. That happens will happen during the Sunday, 18th, during all day, basically in the morning, and also in the afternoon we will have a workshop that I will present a little bit later. The idea that we are offering with this PhD symposium is the opportunity to the PhD candidates to have the possibility to discuss or to present and discuss in front an expert panel, that means the members of Eden that can receive your proposal and have a discussion with you in order to help the PhD candidates to improve the proposal, maybe to think about the research methodological proposal, or to think about the scope of the research proposal, or the research questions, or these kind of things. Of course, this is very useful for the candidates which are in the previous years of their PhD process, but if it's welcome for all of the candidates that could be interested in participating in this kind of activity. We have to share with you that the previous editions of these PhD symposiums, we receive a lot of very positive evaluations of the people who were participating, and also it's a great opportunity for these people to have this possibility to discuss with an expert about their research proposals. And this year we would like also to add a very interesting part on our PhD symposium, which is a workshop. In that case, is a workshop focused on the systematic review As you know, this is one of the relevant topics during the process to build a PhD symposium, a PhD, and also when you are preparing a research. And we have now the opportunity to have two very important research professors, Melissa Braun and Olaf Sawatzki, who will lead this very, very interesting workshop in Sunday, 18th afternoon.
Thanks, Joseph. I'm looking forward to that review workshop myself. I also participated in this, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago when I was coming to the end. It was a very good experience. It's nice to meet other people, other students working in the area, and be able to share your experiences. But it's great to get feedback in a supportive environment. So it's a really excellent part of the Eden Conference.
Let me just add the process to submit a proposal for the PhD symposium is a little bit different than the process to submit a proposal for posters or other or papers, etc. You have to submit, in case that you are interested, you have to submit a short abstract of your research proposal with 2 or 3 questions that you are interested to discuss with the expert panel. And when we accept this proposal, we will ask you to prepare a short presentation, probably maximum 5 slides, with the main ideas that you would like to discuss with the expert panel. This is the way that usually works the PhD symposium.
Thanks, Josep. And they submit through Exordo as well, using the same channels, I think.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, great, fantastic. So encourage your PhD students to come along. So just a little bit about the submission types. So we have quite a range of types. The full paper, which is the kind of the traditional full paper, which is a 20-minute presentation, 15-minute presentation plus 5 questions. Concise paper, 500 to 1,000 word paper, and a 15-minute presentation, so which will be 10 minutes of presentation, 5 minutes of questions. I did have a query by email asking me, did the concise paper need a paper? We do have a short paper template, and that's to facilitate the inclusion in the proceedings at a later time. Posters are also possible, but you will need to bring your poster with you on a plane, which, you know, that sometimes is a challenge, but a short abstract is needed for that. And one new feature as well is a gasta, which is the Irish word for lightning. You can see there from the dictionary. And we have the Gasta master himself, Tom Farrelly, Dr. Tom Farrelly from Munster Technological University. If you haven't heard of Gasta, it's kind of been a feature of Irish conferences in the area of educational technology for quite a long time. So the local conference called EdTech, Tom has been doing his Gasta mastering for, I'd say, about 8 years. He's also done it at some other conferences in the UK, etc. too. So usually it's a very participatory experience. You give a very short talk, 5 minutes long. Tom is usually taunting you from the stage, and there's quite a bit of audience activity. So it's generally a very energized, fun experience for participants. The final category is the Action Lab. That's upon invitation only. And the idea of that is quite an activity-based workshop type session. Do you want to come in on any of those, Mark?
Yeah, we're just getting a few questions coming through in the chat box, so I'll just kind of elaborate.
Will I stop sharing for a second, actually?
Yeah, you might want to look at those because it's always hard to see the chat when you're so if I just respond to a couple of the comments or general points, I think the full paper is reasonably straightforward. You have a template that you download, make sure you see that template, and it's not too overwhelming in terms of the length of the full paper, because the idea is that a conference paper is the start maybe of something that gets you then along the way to a journal article. So we're trying to pitch it in a way that this might be your first piece, or a second piece of working out an idea, a concept, or hopefully some data and a study you've been working on, sharing it with an audience, and the process of writing the full paper is to get you along the journey where it might then ultimately end up as a journal article. And we might talk at some point about the Eden Journal. The concise paper, many conferences only have a short abstract, 200-word abstract. We're encouraging delegates to go to 500 words plus. Now that includes, we do have some headings in the template, and that includes your references, because we're just wanting to make sure that you tease out your abstract to help in the selection process. And those references are usually quite helpful for delegates because they want to follow up on the work that you've put. So many conferences don't have a reference that, a list that comes with your abstract for a very short, concise paper, but we want to have that level of scholarship underneath what you're offering. The Gäste, I see that's interesting. I didn't know that it stood for shouting in Swedish. It's probably a fair amount of shouting to many respects in Gäste. The Gäste session right at the end of the first day is usually very entertaining. It's good to have at the end of the first day prior to heading off for our social events. There will be a limited number because it will be about an hour, I think, or might be thereabouts. And so we can only do so many Gästes. So we'll be very much inclined to choosing those that we think are in the spirit of a Gäste. Give you a little tip. I just reviewed a Gäste paper yesterday, I think it was, and I'm just quoting from memory, but it had a title something like Ed Tech is BS. BS being an abbreviation for something I won't say to be recorded, but that certainly got my attention for a short 5-minute Gäste paper. And then the Action Lab, which I think was on the slide. I'm not sure if Orna mentioned that. We have every session. So we have, I think there will be 6, possibly 7 parallel sessions, depending on how many submissions we have. Every session we have will have an Action Lab, which is very, very carefully being chosen for interactivity. Again, I said earlier for anyone about how we want to walk the talk as much as we can. And so those sessions will have actually a limit in the number of people that can be in them to ensure that there's interactivity. And we're choosing the topics very carefully. So they're very hot topics. AI, I'm pretty confident is going to be one of those, but we will have an Action Lab on micro-credentials, an Action Lab on leadership and in educational technologies, which I think is a reasonably hot topic. It's probably enough, I think, from me, Orna, unless you want to fill any gaps that I've missed.
No, I think you've answered some of the questions, and I see Elena has answered one there in the chat. So there was a question about the proceedings that yes, they will be published, and we're considering linking, inviting some authors to submit in an associated journal. If I have that right, do I?
Joseph, I don't know if you want to just make a comment about the Best Paper Awards and the opportunity for publication.
Yes. But yes, just to reply this question, yes, we have usually the proceedings at the end of the conference. We will ask the permission to the authors to publish in our website, and also to index in the, I think there's the European Library, etc., in order to be accessible and easy to cite, related to the possibility to publish these papers in an indexed journals. This possibility exists, but as you know, you have to pass the peer review process of these journals. We have some journals in collaboration with the conference, for instance, International Journal of Educational Technology and Higher Education, the Online Education Journal, and of course our own journal, which is European Journal of Open and Distance Learning. And yes, and related to the Best Research Paper Award, this is one of the other important traditions of Eden. As you know, we have a selected jury for each conference. This jury is led by an external community or research team. In that case, is from the UNESCO Chair in Education and Technology for Social Change of the Open University of Catalonia. And this team, with a particular jury, we'll analyze the different papers submissions that we receive and choose the best ones, and finally give them one of them the award of the best research paper award of this conference. This best research paper will be announced during the gala dinner in Dublin.
Fantastic.
Joseph, I think I'm right in saying this is the 32nd annual Eden Conference. Correct me if I'm wrong. And the Best Paper Award has been a tradition over that entire period. So it's a very prestigious award, and there are some very, very well-known people who have taken out that award over the years. But actually, just to be nominated for the award is also quite prestigious. So normally there's a nomination list, and the big reveal doesn't occur until, as Joseph said, the gala dinner, essentially, on the Monday evening.
Yes.
I think we've got quite a few of the questions. Just going to double check. And I put in the Gas to Masters website there if you're interested in learning more about that.
Orna, there is a question from Catherine specific to Scopus.
Oh, yeah.
Or Web of Science. That's actually the case in our own university at DCU, that there is an expectation that a paper needs to be in a Scopus listed database. So that's essentially what Joseph was reporting around our commitment to the proceedings, the best we can. Last year, actually, a book was produced, a Springer book, out of the full papers, and we are in discussions at the moment about whether that we will do that as well. At this point in time, we can't commit to that because you have to have the agreement with Springer. That would be one of the desired outcomes. Although, just to speak on a personal note, last year I had a full paper, single-authored full paper that I chose not to put in that book because my own institution also would prefer to see something in a journal article than a book chapter. So, you know, institutions, we understand, have different requirements and rules. What we're trying to do as much as possible is accommodate those. And that's actually one of the reasons why the concise papers are a little bit longer than might be just a 250-word abstract that some people would do, because in my institution, that would be enough to have a concise paper for a new and emerging scholar, if you like.
We're also good for work in progress as well, the concise paper. You know, if you haven't fully got data collected or fully finished, it's a good way of bringing it along. Could you talk more about the structure of the concise paper? Sure, I'll bring up the template now. 1 second. So the templates are all on the Eden website, and they're all available on Exordo as well, which is the conference platform. So was there anything particular you wanted to ask about the template? It's quite a kind of a standard title, abstract. Obviously, you leave this out for peer review. Keywords.
We're not seeing any text.
Oh, sorry, hang on. I'll share again.
I think as you're multitasking there, I'll just come in with a couple.
I have it now, do I? I do.
Yeah, that's better. Or no, if I just make a couple of observations and then you can comment. The thing about an abstract is, I know the research team that we have, we've actually spent quite a lot of time trying to talk with people about what makes a good abstract. And this is something that's often not talked about enough. What are the qualities of a good abstract? In fact, if you do a Google search, you will find some really useful, or search of any type, because I'm conscious there's now other emerging search engines with ChatGPT built in, like Bing. But ultimately, if you do a search, you will find some really good tips on writing an abstract, because there is quite an art to writing an abstract. When I'm reviewing an abstract, one of my pet peeves if that word it makes sense to you. One of the pet things that I look at is people writing very long sentences, because an abstract should grab you. It should be short. Well, short being in that the concepts being presented should be something that you can easily understand. And the challenge with long sentences is that sometimes the key point gets lost. Now, that's not to suggest that good writing is just made up of lots of short sentences. But what my main tip, Orna, here is just for people to think really carefully about writing an abstract. You know, writing an abstract is a lot harder than writing the full journal article or the full conference paper, because you have to synthesize it down to a short number of words. And I find that really difficult to get it quite concise.
Short and snappy. I think the question was around the summary section. The section here in the template. I think that was just an opportunity to give a more fuller description of any emergent findings or future research directions, if I have that correct.
Yeah, I'm going to contradict slightly, Orna, or maybe contradict's not quite the right word. You said a fuller, so what I'm going to say is a concise summary. So that what you really want is to bring together the key points. So here's an example of what, just by a writing technique that really is quite powerful in an abstract, to be quite explicit and say, this paper has 3 key points. Firstly, XYZ. Secondly, and so forth. So again, this is just kind of more experienced writers learn these techniques over time. It doesn't necessarily change the meaning. It's about how you package it together. So Orna said concise, I agree. And you don't want it to be too full here, because again, you will lose the focus. The best thing you can do, of course, is ask your peers, or if you're writing a joint paper, that's the value of writing a joint paper, because your colleagues are going to give you critique. And that's part of the process. I hope I'm not telling people how to suck eggs here, but I find in past experience that these things are not talked about enough. Joseph, I know you have a lot of experience editing. Do you have anything to add about the art of writing a good abstract?
So, Ephraim, is that clearer to you now? Same, would anyone else like to ask any questions to any of us about the submission process or approaches to writing any of the papers? The last section of the session now is really just questions for you or important information about Dublin. What I would say is book your accommodation sooner.
We do have a question which I think is about online participation. Last year we did support online virtual papers, and we've had, as the Eden Management Board has had some debate about this. And those of you who have been earlier in this session will have heard me talking about the social dimension of the conference and the importance of the interactivity between delegates. What we know from the data from last year's conference is that people who gave virtual papers had very low attendance. In fact, it was in some respects a little embarrassing, I'll say, when I had some colleagues who couldn't travel for various reasons and they had minimal people in the room. That doesn't completely dismiss the echo of having the session recorded. But even our data on the number of people who have viewed the recordings is very low. So we want to be respectful of the scholarship and the time it takes to produce a paper. And we think that we will be providing opportunities for people to participate by viewing the main plenary keynotes, some panel discussions, but we do not plan to have parallel tracks that will be presented virtually. There's also another dimension to that. We just have to be very mindful of the logistics and our own capacity. There's a limited number of people at DCU who will be doing all the hard work hosting this conference. And our first priority is to make sure that the in-person experience is a great experience, that the papers go well. And I hope people understand that. Now, it's a kind of bit of double talk in today's hybrid world, but there are just some practicalities associated with that. And also the extent with which we place a fee on hybrid or virtual participation and so forth. So the end decision, after much debate, is we're trialing a different format this year, actually, than previous years anyway, because the Eden conference has also historically been over 3 days. And what we've learned in the post-COVID period is people find it difficult to travel for 3 days. So we've shortened the conference, but we want it to be intense and really engaging and interactive in an in-person event.
If I may, Mark, I think this is very important, not because this is only 2 days, and we have very good keynote speakers. And as you know, this is the annual conference of Eden, which is the face-to-face conference, and we will like to invite all of you to be there in person, because as Eden, we are organizing a lot of different hybrid or also online activities during the year. No? Yesterday we had a webinar. Next week, for instance, we have a very important week, which is the Open Education Week, and you have the opportunity there to attend different webinars about open education. And we are organizing, for instance, in our department called the NAP, which is Network of Academics and Professionals, a monthly webinar. That means we are doing a lot of online activities, but I think we prefer to have our annual conference in person, because this is a great opportunity to work together, to maintain our network, to contact with other people in the place, in that case in Dublin, and this is one that we would like to present.
Well, there's an excellent question about visas. And actually, we are remiss, and we will address this, that we don't have a link on the conference website at this point to the visa application process for Ireland, because we are aware of, we already have quite a number of people outside of Europe who have signed up, because those people generally have to organize their travel a lot earlier in advance. So what we can do from our side, we can make no guarantees about the Irish Immigration Service approving a visa, but what we can do from our side is approve your paper submissions as fast as we possibly can. And I can tell you that papers are being reviewed. We have a key KPI, if you like, a key performance indicator, that we expect papers to be reviewed within 7 days. And if they're not reviewed in 7 days, they're actually reassigned to a different reviewer. So we are very conscious of approving or providing constructive feedback on papers, because it may be you don't get it fully approved the first round and you're asked to make some minor changes, but we will review those papers as quickly as possible. Once you have a confirmed paper, you're then in a position to go and apply for your visa. We can give you the letters that you might require when you see the details on the Irish site. Obviously, there are many countries that don't need visas outside of Europe coming into Ireland. I come from one. I work off a New Zealand passport, which is where my home of birth is, and I'm still a New Zealand citizen. So if you do need a visa and you're having any challenges, please email us, contact us, and we will do our best to facilitate that. But having organized a few conferences in the past where challenges arise is when people leave it too late. So you really need to get this process underway as quickly as possible. And for those of you outside of Europe, we have an added complication at the moment with our Ireland has around 85,000 Ukrainian refugees or displaced people, to put it more appropriately. So some of our systems are really stretched, and it might take a bit longer than normal in different circumstances.
I put the link into the Department of Foreign Affairs visa information, so that's really a good initial place to start in the chat there. And that's great, Catherine. We'd be delighted to have you. And again, as Mark said, if you do need any help with any letters or process, do contact us, and we'd be very happy to help. So any more questions? I think we've got the ones that are in the Q&A. Any more questions? any COVID? Not really. And essentially, you can choose to wear a mask or not. The majority of the population are not wearing masks. The only context where you must wear a mask is inside a hospital or maybe in a doctor's surgery. But there's no particular forms or rules that you need to fill out beforehand. Currently. I like to say currently because you never know. I know we won't. That's not going to.
And that's probably a good question, because I know in some European countries that on public transport you might be required to wear a mask and so on. At this point in time, Ireland doesn't have any such rules. Of course, very conscious around buses having ventilation, cleaning for hands and all of those sorts of things. So it's not like that COVID has gone away. We're very conscious of that. During the conference, we will certainly follow sort of the standard health protocols that you now expect.
Yeah, I mean, the university has very clear protocols around hand, cleaning and stuff like that, and all that will be in place. But of course, if you prefer to wear a mask, etc., you're very welcome to. You will have to start practicing your Irish, all right? I'll have to start practicing mine as well.
Okay.
Final chance for any questions. Otherwise, I think we're out at a wrap. We hope that this has been informative and useful. And as we say, we are open to any questions. You can follow up through the Eden contact details. We're looking forward to really hosting a vibrant conference, in-person event in what we hope will be also a warm and sunny Dublin, and a place where you can also explore some other places beyond the conference itself. And we were also happy to ensure that we provide you information about the sort of typical tourist attractions if this is the first time you're coming to Dublin. Orna's point, my final point that she made a few minutes ago, is it will be the start of tourist season in Dublin. Many of our more budget, cheaper hotels are currently full of Ukrainians, sadly, and it's unlikely that will change before June. So accommodation will be at a premium, and the sooner you book it, the better, because it is quite common in Dublin for accommodation to be fully booked out once we hit into June, and certainly July onwards.
Now, actually, Elena, is there anything you wanted to chip in? Have we missed any important organizational pieces? I think we may have covered it, but just in case there is, I'm not sure if you can come in by mic. I think we're fine. Excellent. Is there official conference hotel? So there's a hotel right next door to the university called the Skyline Hotel. And I think we gave another option as well on the website, the Bonington. So those are right beside the university, but you could very easily stay anywhere in the city centre and either walk or grab a taxi or a bus out very simply. So it's really up to you. Do you want to stay in the city centre, or where the university is in a nice residential village on the edge of the city, from Condra it's called.
Yeah, and when you say the edge of the city, the edge of the CBD, the city extends much further. So just in case people, Orna said this right at the start, it's about a 30-minute walk maximum from the centre of the city. I personally like walking, and so if I was coming to this conference for the first time and I wasn't wearing heels, then I'd be quite comfortable setting off each day walking from the central city. But actually also the buses run past the campus probably about every 2 or 3 minutes. It's one of the main roads in Dublin. There's just buses all the time, bus stop right outside, and it would be no more than a 10-minute bus ride. Taxis also are going past all the time, although sometimes they're full because they're coming in from the airport. But essentially, don't be put off by the idea that we're just a little bit out of the main city. It just means we're not in the hustle and bustle. And if I was thinking of coming for the first time to Dublin, my recommendation would be perhaps to choose a hotel more central in the city, so you get to experience Temple Bar and all of the areas that Dublin's famous for, and you just travel a little bit each day because it's only 2 days. But if you're just coming for the conference itself and you've been to Dublin before, you probably would prefer a hotel that's no more than, well, one hotel is about 2 minutes walk and the other would be maximum of 10 minutes walk.
Yeah. So I put the Skyline, which is the one right beside the university, in the chat there. If I would stay near the river if you were going to the city centre, that's probably the nicest thing to do. So listen, thank you everyone, and thank you Josep and Mark for your sharing all your information on the conference. We hope to see you in Dublin. Slán agus Bannacht. There's a bit of Irish for you now. So hope to see you then. Bye.
Okay. See you in Dublin. Bye bye.
Bye everyone. See you in Dublin.